very closely. So I'd like to introduce two political scientists from Western's campus. Sara Weir, who's the chair of the political science department. And Todd Donovan, whose advice and counsel we've appreciated and observations over quite a bit of campaign time now in helping us with various campaigns. So for both of you, thank you for
Why don't you go first?
All right, I'll go first. Tim said something about expecting brilliant observations. Don't hold. You said don't. Yeah, so don't hold your breath. I mean, Sara has. So I guess I think I was asked to say a couple things about where this might be going, and maybe a few things about what might play out in the caucuses in Washington. But before that, Tim didn't say, I was back in Iowa City for the caucuses at the expense of the University of Iowa, which was really fun. And I've always not liked caucuses, but I think I may have been more of a believer in them now because they don't seem very representative to me, maybe of the rank and file of the party. But that said, and this is something that might be really interesting here, February 9th.
Yes.
The turnout doubled there from 2004. And I mean, it's an amazing, there's probably people in this room who got involved with the party here at some point through the caucuses. And you can just like see the future of those county parties signing in these long lines and registering. And they're registering a lot of people as well. So maybe expect more people than you might be planning on. But so that one of the virtues of the caucuses then that's maybe underappreciated is that sort of party building thing. The Iowa folks really love this caucus process because of the retail politics. That it'd be face to face. I would love it if we get that here. I was there for just a few hours and met Elizabeth Edwards and Chris Dodd and John Edwards and Joe Biden. I mean, those cliche moments where you're sitting in a cafe, well, we kind of knew where they were going to be going, so we showed up. But we've always kind of been so far off the radar screen. This year, depending if Edwards is serious that he's going to stay through the Tsunami Tuesday thing, and Obama certainly will, Kucinich will, Hillary will. There's proportional allocation of delegates in most of the, if not all, the Democratic states. So as long as no one's if they're splitting at 20, 30, 40, or whatever from here on out, it's going to be potentially wide open through the convention. I'm not predicting that. Or if I do, if that happens, then I did predict. But so, it is, we're the first state, I think Louisiana, don't quote me on this, Nebraska and Washington all go on that Saturday immediately after the big Tuesday. So if the waters are further murkied, that's not a word, by what happens that Tuesday, then it's possible the candidates might come out here. I'm trying to remember the last time Bill Bradley came here in 2000. I can't remember.
His best turnout in this.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when we saw the candidates actually coming up here, let alone to Seattle. But there might be more incentive for that. My big highlight of the caucus was there were like, imagine a precinct with 700. There were two precincts. One had 700 people show up. One had 500 people show up. And which is the problem was somebody mentioned Larry mentioned that the Obama people had been Kucinich people were going to go over to the Obama people. You couldn't get across the room physically to talk to people about the deals that go on and all sorts of things. So it's almost like it's getting too big there. We did surveys that are coming right now. People who attended the caucuses, 85% of people said they had fun. So tell that to people when you're trying to get them to get out to the caucuses. We got a couple observations from some polling stuff that we're doing here in Washington. This goes back to October, and this may be why the Democrats will probably win. They will win in November. If you ask Washington voters their sort of feeling thermometers, likability scales on all the Democratic candidates, even the ones who've dropped out, they're all really high. There's pretty high positives in terms of whoever wins here. And actually, you see that in the discourse so far among the candidates. They snip at each other a little bit, but they're all really staying fairly positive. I think they're keeping their likabilities up there. The Republicans are all over even before the campaign started. Among Republican voters, there's candidates that a bunch of Republicans can't stand. or relative to the Democrats. So, and then on top of that, when the process started, from Iowa to New Hampshire, if you saw the Republican debate in New Hampshire, I think you're seeing that they're going to go nuclear on each other, or they're already starting that, and they're starting to a point where they've got people that aren't that likable to themselves anyway. So maybe it's just wishful thinking, but at least the numbers sort of say we can kind of sit back and hope for the best there. But that, there was, and even at the caucus, there was tremendous positive energy among all the supporters of all the candidates at the caucus level. We're seeing that here in terms of our voters too. I don't know what else. Like I said, no brilliant observations here. But that, I think for the first time in a long time, this state might matter. Of course, primary won't matter at all. That's just a stupid exercise for us here.
We can all register as Republicans.
We could, yeah. Go vote for Huckleberry. Well, okay, that's my last point. I showed Sara a picture of this when you walked into the men's room at the high school where we had the caucuses. They had all the urinals lined up with names of the prominent Republicans. That was maybe the highlight of that and meeting Elizabeth.
Would you emphasize why the primary doesn't matter? I don't understand that.
Yeah,
the primary means first.
The primary is, the Secretary of State wants the Democratic National Committee to recognize our primary, and he thinks if they have it, then maybe the party will recognize it. But since we don't have party registration, the DNC doesn't know who's going to sign in. With the caucuses, you can't go and cross over. Because the state party too. Well, the state party doesn't really have me saying it. It's really, even the state party said so. Well, maybe the state party doesn't. But the DNC ultimately is who sets those rules. And if we say we're going to allocate delegates that way, historically the DNC has said we don't have evidence of who those people are. There's no party registration. But whatever. I mean, that's the issue. It's a party organization decision that they don't trust who people are voting in those primaries. The legislature and the state parties actually like funding the primaries because then we get great data about.
So you're saying it's imperative. It's imperative that we attend the caucus.
Yeah, for the Democrats, all that matters is the caucuses in terms of how the delegates are going to be allocated to the convention. For the Republicans, the primary kind of matters, but for the Democrats, it's all 100% the caucuses.
I have a question regarding the change of people voting differently than polls said in Iowa. They said the caucuses have a tendency to do eye-to-eye contact when you go in there and say, I'm for Clinton or Kucinich or whoever. You hold strong to that. Versus where you might be picked up on a phone in New Hampshire and say, oh yeah, I want to vote for Obama if I go, and things like that. So there's that big disparity. And I wonder if there was any of this feeling of Midwest patriarchal family structure that makes sure the people below that patriarch stay in line.
In Iowa, well, it's actually the polling in New Hampshire. I think this kind of got buried in the media, but it was spot on. It said Obama would get 38%, and he got 37 or 38%. So the mystery is what happened with Hillary's vote. A lot of people swung towards her in the last minute. I don't know. I haven't really looked at the data, but
this about the old lady.
Yeah, I mean that thing where she welled up maybe really I did her well. So, Sara will talk about that. The caucuses, for all that discussion of that sort of myth of the deliberative process of the Iowa caucuses. There's so many people there, and it was so hard just to run getting people in the door and signed in, and then collecting the cards with their names on it, and then getting all the cards in half an hour, and nobody had time to talk to anybody. It was, it's more. You see more of that here in Washington, I think, than you do in Iowa. It was really just kind of a frenzy to just be able to get things counted. And then do the math in front of 700 people.
Fortunately, we've got a great organizing committee that's trying to anticipate the possible downsides.